Yo, welcome to Sig Slayers, the comic signature show, period. I'm Mike the Sig Slayer, chilling with Mark the Honorable Villain. What up, fam?
What's up, Mike? I know you've got this guy a few times, man. This will be my first time, and I'm excited, man.
I'm always excited to see this guy. Today we have the Titan of Tonality, Alex Sinclair, joining us. But before we chop it up with Alex, please like, subscribe, hit the notification bell, and please comment. All right, our next guest. I mean, this is like the third or fourth time, but I gotta let it be known. This man is known as the Houdini of Hue, the Gradient General, and the Commander of Color. Ladies and gentlemen of the Stash Now, we bring to you the one and only Alex Sinclair. How you doing, brother?
Hey, how's it going, man? I think I'm gonna have you come over and do my eulogy when I die, so you can throw all those out for me.
I will be there, man. You are a legend, man. You are a legend, and you've been on the show before, and the last time we talked, it was like the beginnings of you being a freelance color artist for all of comics, not just exclusively to DC. And so I wanted to get a little bit of what that experience has been like. Is there artists that you know, in this experience that you work with, that you've been dying to work with, that you finally got a chance to work with?
Yeah, it's been great, and that's like you said. I'm kind of freelance, and in the full sense of the word. So I can work with whoever I want. Obviously, my first email went out to Marvel Comics because, as a true comic book fan, those of us that read both DC and Marvel and all the others, obviously I want to work with those characters, and so that's the first folks I reached out to was them. There was a few other people who helped me get in touch with them and who had left DC as well, and we were kind of talking about, you know, working together, and so all that stuff's kind of happening, and then it's been such a so many different people and characters and books that I worked on since that it's hard to just try and narrow it down to, hey, this is who I'm excited to have worked with or I'm working with now, but been able to expand my trips to abroad as well, and through just casual meetings of people like Bob Layton, you know, someone who I idolized as a reader, as a fan. And when you say Iron Man, the first name that comes into my head is Bob Layton, because that's who I read growing up, and having him look at my work and say, give me his card and say, all right, we're gonna do something together. And so we've done a few things already, and it's exciting. It's fun, and like I said in the past, there were a lot of conversations that like, oh, are you exclusive? And it was all, yeah, I'm exclusive with DC, and it wasn't that I wasn't happy that I was exclusive, but because they treated me well. You know, now that I'm having these conversations, are you exclusive? There's a smile on my face, you know, saying, nope, let's do something together.
Man, so you working with Bob Layton, you know, somebody that you admired when you were a kid. And this begs the question, Alex, was there someone in the past that has admired you, or someone that you have admired in the past that came to you and said, hey man, I really dig what you do, that it made you really feel good about what you do?
Oh, it was a few years ago, and I just retold this story to somebody, and it's probably my favorite or top 3 Comic-Con moments. That I was at the DC booth. I just finished a signing, probably with Jim and Scott, and I looked over to the side of the booth, and Klaus Janson was standing there with a group of other folks. I think it was Mark Chiarello, and obviously, who's not a fan of Klaus? But I'd never met him before. And being good friends with Mark Chiarello, I walked over and kind of nudged myself into the little circle that they were in, and I was biding my time, waiting for a stoppage so I could introduce myself and say, Klaus, dude, you're like the best. And somebody was talking, and Klaus interrupted whatever the person was saying and goes, Alex, hey, so great to meet you. I'm such a big fan of your work. And I just stood there like, that's my line.
Wow, that's
so. You know, to meet someone who you admire for so many years, and to find out that they're so down to earth, such nice people, and you know they say the whole "don't meet your heroes" thing, but I've yet to have a meeting that doesn't pan out like that.
I'm shifting gears real quick, and we're going to talk about AI for a minute because when it's been an advent of AI information out across social media from artists, and avidly against AI for obvious reasons. But I wanted to get your take on your main concern about the advent of AI in the comic production space as a color artist. What do you feel could be a major threat to that industry?
Well, AI as a whole it's not that it's invasive, but it circumvents the artist and the true sense of art is the creativity and the work that goes into each piece. So to think that you can just sit there and type in something and have the out for you and call it your art is insulting to those of us that have, blood, sweat, and tears over years. I think Carlos Dianda said one time, just because you bought that microwave pizza, put in the microwave and ate it, doesn't make you a chef. So, it's about that. It's about not the I just drew this. It's it took me 10 years to get to the talent level so that I could draw this. And so it's really a slap in the face. And I know very, very, very many people in the comics industry, which is an art and writing driven medium. And AI is encroaching on both those, the writing and the art. And so, it's infuriating. I think that's the word. And so an insult to anyone who says that they're artists by using AI is definitely something that a lot of us look down upon and with anger, and it's laughable for them to say something like that.
The actors and the movie people, they had a strike and they were talking about AI and they were fighting against that. But there was a sense from the industry of they had an interest in using AI to probably cut production costs and stuff like that. Is there any sense of that happening in the comics as far as the publishers? Are they like willing to take it on, or is it like a don't ask, don't tell, and they'll take it? Because I know they were taking Matina for a while, and it was known that he was stealing from other artists, layouts, faces, all of that stuff, as late as 2018, and he was still a hot cover artist all the way up until this year once he got outed for using AI. So is it kind of like a don't ask, don't tell, or from a corporate level they're starting to gain interest on that too?
Oh, I think they're very much stamping down on it on that level too. You don't want to alienate those that create content for you, because they'll eventually leave you, and at some point when you lose all your talent, then what are you going to use? You're going to produce very low quality stuff. This AI stuff has continually shown that it's low quality, and I see it as a fad. I see it as the people who are creating are apathetic to the process, and so at some point they're gonna get bored of it. Like, what's the new thing that I'm gonna do now? And so they'll move on to whatever that is.
I think on one of your previous interviews, you said you love drawing animals.
When I was going to college with getting my art degree, I hadn't decided to go into comics, so I was really just painting. And at that time, I was doing watercolor paintings of underwater wildlife for the most part, and some frogs. Frogs have always been part of my thing. And about my junior year in college is when I decided that I was going to switch my palette and my portfolio and trying to go for comics. When I realized that you could make a living being a comic book artist, that's when I decided to do it. And so, but continuously, if I'm going to draw for myself or paint for myself, it's not going to be digital. It's going to be on paper, on cardboard, on something, Surface, and and it's going to be some kind of wildlife. It won't be a superhero. And it's because I do that all day, every day, right? And so I want to get, I want to touch the paper. I want to, paint on the paper. I want the medium to challenge me. And I think as easy as Photoshop has become for me, challenge now comes from the art that I'm coloring and how to push myself as an artist that way. So when I go aside, I like the chaotic mediums, like the watercolors, the pastels, charcoals, stuff that really make you work and challenge. And so that's where I go. These collaborations with amazing, talented people have made me a better artist without having to draw the stuff myself. I see what they're doing, the shortcuts they take, as far as like how to get to a point, to how to finish a piece without going through all the full steps, the shorthand, if you will. You take all that stuff and you start to use it yourself in your own drawings when you're drawn by yourself. And so the collaboration is amazing in that, it takes 2-3 of us to come up with a art piece that folks love, and the fact that we all give a little bit of ourselves to that to make one piece is so cool. It's my favorite part of comics, but again, it does feed the individual artist in the end, in that I borrow from Jim's layouts to how Scott inks, or how he sees the different areas with different textures. That kind of stuff is what I'm thinking of when I'm drawing my own pieces, and essentially making them better than they were years ago.
Comic Pro Bootcamp, what kind of feedback are you getting back from your cadets?
Amazing. So rewarding to teach young artists and see the rawness of their work, the rawness of their energy towards the medium. Because after working a few years, it's work, right? But you still love it. But to see these young, talented artists hungry for it it feeds that ego. It feeds that strive to continue to work, to create. We've had some great success with some of our artists. One of our alumnus was nominated for an Eisner this year for Best New Talent. So Eamon Winkle was amazing when he got to us, and thankfully we were able to kind of push him in the right direction, and shortly after he's now getting paid work. He's had his first panel and signing and all that stuff at Comic-Con this year. And it's cool. You feel like this proud papa, right? That you had a little bit to do with their success. We don't want to take any of the credit that he deserves, because he put in a ton of work into it, and so it's so cool to see folks that you've helped succeed do so.
That's awesome. And so Comic Pro Bootcamp is you, Ryan Benjamin. Who else is involved?
Will Sportasio and Carlos Dianda. And so, there's over 120 years worth of experience in the room. Just we're kind of spouting it all off. And I'll be honest, I'm sitting in those lectures and I'm sitting with my ears open too, because I picked up some pointers with these guys that I'm sitting there and like, what? You did what? And so it's cool because, like I said, you pick up these little things, tidbits, and stuff that's not necessarily published. It's like known by many artists, but not. I think we all benefited from working in a studio environment where, if you're sitting within 6 artists, you're all going to learn a ton from each other, along with the fact that you're pushing each other artistically. So that fun and familiar competitions there, but you're also borrowing tips and tricks from each other to make your own stuff work.
Last time you were on the show, we had the Red Hood reunion, which was awesome. Doug Mankey, Tom Wynn, Judd Winnick. It was awesome. But in that, you said something in passing, and I'd be like, wait a minute, this dude is the commander of color. You said you did damn near every Crisis. I was like, he did it. Besides the original one. I was like, wow. Okay, so I have to ask you a question about that because you worked on Infinite Crisis, you worked on Identity Crisis, you worked on Final Crisis, but I wanted to talk about Identity Crisis and Final Crisis because there are two different types of stories, like all together. And so I just wanted to get your take on what was the differences in the approach between Identity Crisis and Final Crisis?
I think Identity Crisis was a drama, right? And so when I approached that with palettes that were very definitely mood driven, there was a lot of, the writer Brad Meltzer is an amazing novelist. And so he brought a lot of that, of his, his mystery and drama work into the comic, into the story. And it was cool because it challenged me. I don't think I'd ever done something like that before. And it was cool to jump in and all right, let's do this. And Rags and Mike drew and inked the hell out of that story. There's so much emotion visually already there. And so I had to come in and somehow push that a little bit more. And so I love the fact that it really wasn't action driven, much like 99% of the comic books that we see are. And so the drama side of it really spoke to me. The story was great. It was so different. There's some revelation moments that you just went like, what the heck is he doing? But everything worked for a purpose, and I think his background as a novelist really paid off in that he thought the whole arc through really nicely. And so great package. I got to, like I said, work with folks that had, I always admired Rags' work, and Brad I met. He did a signing at a bookstore close to Wildstorm, like Wildstorm offices. I think it was a few months before we were going to start the project, and that's when I met him. I just kind of showed up and introduced myself, and he'd been a big fan of Hush, and that's why he had requested me on the book. So it was super cool, and we've since become friends, and we're always kind of keeping in touch here and there. And when he's in town, we see each other. But again, it's cool for me at that project. I met great people, and it really pushed me because of how different it is, and which kind of leads us to Final Crisis. Final Crisis was like drag out, punch out, holy crap, the whole universe is going to hell. Wall-to-wall action, and so your palettes are all about it's nothing about emotion, it's all about pace and movement and leading the eye through fluid kind of panel work and all that kind of stuff, and the art was incredible. It was so much fun to work on. The early stuff with J.G. Jones was so gorgeous, and so it was, we had collaborated on the covers for 52 before that, and built such a bond because of that. That it was cool to just jump in and let's do this differently.
Yeah, and where was it? Did you only just work with the JG pages for Final Crisis? Because it was so many stories, right?
The end. Yeah, Doug came in at the end, and I was like, all right, here we go. And so Doug's a little bit more in your face, bold blacks, and so my job was to kind of maintain the look of the book, even though we were switching artists in a graphic manner that was very different from one to the other. And so I just kind of slid the palette over and to keep that continuity going.
Alex, you're literally all over the place in the comic book world right now. It's like really fascinating to see the comic book lineups each week and to see your name all over the place. And so I just saw you on the Ghost Machine. I mean, that's like one of the newest publishers, and then you already got a cover on Ghost Machine. I'm like, Alex out there hustling, man. I love it. All right, but I wanted to get from you, if you can share with your fans, name 3 projects that you're working on right now that you want people to know about so they can go to the comic book shop and pick up anything, where it could be a cover, it could be whatever.
So the first issue of Werewolf by Night just launched last week. Super fun project. it's based on I think they launched that movie on Disney Plus last year. A year ago, maybe a little bit more than a year ago. That was so great. It was in black and white. So when they said, "Hey, we're doing a Werewolf by Night comic," I was like, well, "It's not gonna be black and white, right?" Why are you calling me? But it's really fun. It's great to work with, a werewolf. Who doesn't want to work on Werewolf by Night? So again, different kind of character, different property. I think it's polybagged because it's not. I think it's a mature reader content, so I'm free to go as bright and lively with the blood as I want to, and so that gives me a different level of palette choices and decision making that I can push things, and super fun. The last issue of Era of Apocalypse came out last week as well. And anytime you get to work with the X-Men, it's so much fun. Tom Brevoort moved over to the X office and asked me if I wanted to do this. I think it's launching a major story arc from there. So tons of fun. I'm starting to do covers with Scott Williams.
As a penciler? He's a penciler?
No, so Scott's penciling and inking, and I'm doing the colors over him.
Wow, so it's just you two only?
Yes.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah, well, because it's for Marvel, and so Jim's not allowed to play with us. Things like that. I'm actually about to start. They're relaunching Iron Man, and so kind of full circle. We were just talking about Iron Man with Bob Layton. They're relaunching Iron Man, and they asked me to be on the book, and I'm about to start working on that today, in fact.
Okay.
I'm excited for that. The book comes out in October. And so to be on 2 ongoing series with Marvel now is exciting. And so I'm still doing stuff for the Star Wars group. Bylab Jakku is coming out. I'm part of that project. And many other things. You spoke about penciling covers. I'm talking to the folks at Top Shelf Comic. They do variants for the for Skybound, so for the G.I. Joe and the Transformer books, and so they kind of approached me about maybe penciling a cover for the G.I.
Oh,
Joe
wow.
books. So, I'm about as scared as I'm excited about that, because I've never had a cover that I penciled before, and so I'm taking my time laying it out, and hopefully gets approved, and then we go from there.
Man, that's awesome. Sig Slayers exclusive right there. I like that. Alex Sinclair first cover.
Alex, while we were doing our research, I found out that you worked on one of the properties that I really loved, a Lego property called Bionicle. How much commercial work outside of comics do you do? Do you color for product illustrations?
It's very here and there. When I was with DC, I did work with their licensing department a lot, and mostly because they would do their style guide stuff, so that when they sold, so when Target bought the license for Superman, they'd sell them this CD or DVD worth of art, and it had all these posters that they could use and all these kind of design pieces that they could use, and they'd hire me to color those pieces. Specifically because it happened right after we did For Tomorrow, and so they were pulling art from For Tomorrow for that style guide, and they asked me to color it. Same with Batman and Hush and stuff like that. I've done covers for some of their DVDs with Jim. Jim does gets asked to do a lot of licensing stuff, and so he pulls Scott and I along with that, and then those are fun to do. Like we did these metal cover, they did these tin DVD cases for Man of Steel, Justice League, and Batman versus Superman. So we did the art for those tins, and so it's here and there. Like I did an Adidas job with who drew that? I can't remember. I don't know. I mean, it was for Adidas. I've done some stuff with Brian Hitch as well, and so just kind of here and there. The Lego stuff was Bionicle was through the licensing department at Wildstorm. Carlos Deander drew that, and so they wanted to keep everything in house, and they sent me the color work, and it was fun because like my kids' friends who didn't care necessarily about Superman or Wonder Woman were like, "Whoa, you did Bionicle?" I'm like, "What?" What?
I was telling Mike, yeah, I was excited about it. I was like, what?
And then we recently did the Lego portraits. Jim Drew and I colored that they turned into the Lego portrait pieces that you can buy the sets for. And so, if you buy the box, you can either do Batman, Joker, or Harley. And if you buy two, you can do two of those or combine them. And there's a second piece that's a Batman, Catwoman. And if you buy all three, you can do one of each. Or there's a vertical piece of Batman in the Batcave.
Oh, wow.
And so it was super cool. The process for that was very eye-opening. How they took a Jim Lee drawing and using the little circle pegs of Legos, creating this portrait. And like, I remember that first meeting we had it via Zoom with the Lego folks because they're in Denmark. And Jim and I were sitting there and they flashed the piece, and all I could think was like, oh my God, that looks like Jim's drawing. Like, how the heck did you do that? So they have these Lego artists, they're so talented. We were asking the Lego artist, like, that little red dot by his cheek, can you move it two over to the right and one up? Because we were fine tuning the piece, but it felt so, so, I don't know. I really felt like an asshole making her move a dot, like to move two slots over. But in the end, it turned out it was a great piece. We get a lot of positive feedback on that and posts from people building those pieces. They recorded us talking about the process. And I guess if you buy that, there's a link, like a QR code that if you scan and you listen to it on your headphones, you're listening to us talk about piece as you're building it.
Oh, wow.
So it's pretty cool. They really go all out.
Alex, I wanted to get back to your longest collaborator, Scott Williams. You guys are probably on autopilot by now. When Scott sends you art, does he have to send you a lot of notes, or does he just let you do your own thing?
For the most part, they let me do my own thing. And I think, I don't know that we've ever been on autopilot. I think it's a trust thing. And so it's more of they trust what I'm going to do. And I trust that when they have feedback on it, I trust where it's coming from, and I know where it's coming from, and I know that it's had success in the past. And so there's like I said, that collaboration. It's almost become like we're reading each other's thoughts at times. I mean, there's still pieces that I get and that I color, and Jim will look at it and goes, "Oh wow," he goes, "That's not what I was thinking." He goes, "But it looks good," and so we kind of elaborate and push from there and things like that. But yeah, it's I think what's worked the most is that neither of us is ever complacent. So we're not happy with the piece that we're working. We're happy with the work we've done, but we always want to make sure that the next one is the best one, and the next one is the best one, the next one is the best one. I think we all believe in that. Your best piece is the last one. The last piece is the one everybody remembers, right? And so you want it to be a memorable one, and so you always want to push it that.
Alex, you were pretty much at the beginning of Wildstorm, pretty much. You were also with Wildstorm when Wildstorm was acquired by DC. And so I wanted to find out, what was that transition like for you, going from the Wildstorm office to part of the DC now?
I think I probably had the most changed experience. In that at Wildstorm, I was one of the people in charge of the coloring department, and was at that time starting to do freelance. They were allowing me to do freelance work outside afterwards. And it's funny because about 2 months before they announced the buyout, John Nee, who was in charge of Wildstorm, told me that I could actually freelance for DC Comics too. And I didn't think about it. At the time, I was like, oh, cool, I'm going to call DC now. But I didn't realize that it was because we were going to be part of them that they were okay with it. But once the buyout did happen, DC has a rule that you can't freelance in the same department that you work in. so that as a colorist, I couldn't freelance in the color department. So what they did for me is they actually, they moved me from the coloring department to the licensing department that Wildstorm had. And so I was doing a lot of design work for them so that I continue to freelance outside of my studio work, because they realized that I was making more money as a freelancer than I was on the payroll. And so they wanted to allow me to continue to do so, which there was, I mean, I love them to death because they were thinking of me through the entire process and how they were going to handle this transition to DC Comics. What was funny was, as DC came in, they had a specific way that things needed to be done for their books, and one of them was the standards for how to color a comic book. And when they sent them to us and read them, I walked over to John and I said, John, this is the stuff we were doing like a year and a half ago. We're beyond that level at this point. Do we need to go back to that, or can we talk to them and maybe bring theirs up to this? And it took up some back and forth. It's not like they immediately said, oh yeah, let's do it your way. Like I said, they're always, they're very good about like sticking to something that they like, that they think it works, and with that. And so it took quite a few meetings and until they said that, you know, initially it was like, well, you do it your way, but if you're doing one of our books, you got to do it our way, that kind of stuff. So I'm sure that they came around and realized. I find that fascinating, Alex, because I've always felt that the Wildstorm camp revolutionized coloring in mass for comics. You know what I mean? Like, yes, there were like Steve Oliff was one of them, like a big pioneer, right? But yeah. I'm saying like in mass, like Image was when they started, you know, doing things. But when it came to the big two, I felt like a lot of the modern guys from, you know, the late 90s on to today are, a lot of them are alums from Wildstorm that set the precedent of superhero comics on both ends. You got David Barron, Laura Martin now, Jeremy Cox.
Jeremy Cox, and then what's his name? He passed away.
Justin Ponser.
Yes, Justin Ponser. He was over on Marvel, killing it.
I mean, I think you mentioned Steve Oliff, and that's another one of my, like, I just met him for the first time at this Comic-Con, San Diego. And I think, and he walked up with Joe Chido, so my two coloring heroes right there, right? And then Joe and I are really good friends because he was there at Wildstorm when I came in, and I did some work with him. For about 3 months, I did assistant work with him with the color guides. And I think the success of the list of people that you just rattled off has to include Joe Chido as the main influence of that. Because Joe was doing the color guides for the work that we were doing, what was called separations then. So we were doing digital interpretations of Joe's guides. And so talk about a lesson in a page. Joe and his sense of color, of storytelling is I learned more from him in those 3 months than I did in my 4 years of college about color. And so I credit Joe heavily for how I color. And it's not digital because Joe hates digital. In fact, he just bought his first iPad to start doing stuff digitally.
Oh, wow.
And so that's how ingrained Joe is in my psyche as a colorist. I know that Laura, Jeremy, everybody that worked at Wildstorm Productions that touched one of those guides learned every day from him without him having to say a word, just by putting that color on those pages. It's amazing. If you get a chance to, I think you can, in Facebook or even on eBay, buy a couple of his guides. My God, they're gorgeous pieces of art. And so we would all work off of those and learn from those. And that's how you get talent like that, and that, so that the influence came from those guys. On the digital side of things, like you mentioned, Steve Olive had his studio, Ollie Optics. I think Digital Chameleon was already around, and then they were doing work. Steve was working on the Todd Barrett system, which is basically like coloring with Illustrator, which is hard. But he was making stuff look gorgeous, and we were doing Photoshop. Digital Chameleon was doing Photoshop. Rob hadn't launched his coloring studio just yet. He came in a little bit after we did. And then there was Electric Crayon, Bucelato's studio. And those are kind of the ones that I remember that were doing good separation work. There was other studios that, you know, when they told you if you were doing guides, because I was doing guide work for DC Comics right before they bought us out, and the folks who were doing the separations weren't that good, and so it was we were learning how to use Photoshop to paint comic books, basically, is what it was, because Photoshop wasn't a painting medium then yet. It was still a program that was created for photography. So we're trying to adapt it to work with the way we worked. So there was a lot of that, a lot of, you know, trial and error, experimenting, a lot of error.
For the people that don't know, Alex, you mentioned color guide, right? So, and you said that you worked from a color guide. Can you explain to the audience what are color guides?
Yes, and so before digital comics were even a thing, or digital coloring was even a thing, what each book would do, you'd make a photocopy of each page reduced, and then you're using dyes, markers, colored pencils, paints, you'd do the color on there. Okay, and then you'd have to code it. Each color had a code, and your palette was 370 colors, and that was it. Okay, and then you'd send that out to a studio where they call them these ladies with the ruby lith, and ruby lith is kind of, if you know what a fruit roll-up is.
Yep.
Imagine something like that, but the film is super thin, and with an X-Acto knife, so you overlay it over the art, so it's semi-transparent, and you cut out a mask for each color, and then that's what they used to print, right? And so they would use the coding was based on the percentages of cyan, magenta, yellow, and black, so that if you had, 50% magenta over yellow to make orange, that's how you get that yellow with the little red dots in them, and that's how they were done back then. With the introduction of digital, that goes away because obviously the printing process changes drastically, but also with Photoshop, your palette just went from 370 to millions of colors, and you can airbrush now. But back then it was just flat color, just because of the complexity of the process to do it. Now with digital, you're just painting on there, you're airbrushing, you're doing whatever with these tools. But a lot of us that were being brought in were really rookies in the industry, and Joe had a really solid background in painting, and so it was the same process. They would photocopy a page, and Joe would go in with markers and pencils and create these amazing guides of color. And so what we do is we clip the guide next to the monitor that we were working on, and then we're basically interpreting what Joe had done digitally. And so the process, the style changed over the years, but at the heart of it, we were feeding off of that guide that Joe was creating. And so all that amazing color was all coming from Joe, and we were just kind of reinterpreting it. And there was a few of us who were able to absorb that genius from him and later inject it into our own work. Because after a while, Joe decided to retire, and so there was a few of us that were like, okay, I guess we're just coloring and we're not using guides, and let's go.
Wow, so that was like y'all training wheels. When he retired, you guys were off into the world.
We're on our bikes, that's right.
and no one had that kind of like in-depth training, like while on the job. That's crazy. And then you guys.
So, and Steve Oliff would do guides for his studio as well. So and a lot of them start to resurface nowadays, where I don't think he ever sold his guides. So they're resurfacing, and I'm like, I gotta get my hands on some of that. But his studio went through the same process, and so his studio produced a ton of really talented colorists as well. And so, at the heart of it, when you have someone like Steve Oliff or Joe Chito, keeping a unified look, and in the same sense, teaching you how to color comics, that's how you get, quality work and then high quality alumni, if you want.
Last couple of questions here, Alex. This one's here is more of like an industry question for people, because you do Comic Pro boot camp, so it's obviously catered toward people that aspire to do commercial work in the comic book industry and learn some kind of focus of it. And so this is a page rate question. I hear that a lot. I don't know much of it, and so I want to ask the biggest pro I know about it. And so, is there a difference when you get hired in a page rate when you do interiors versus a cover, or is it just one flat rate for everything? Does that apply to art to the pencilers as well?
I believe it applies across the board, and covers do pay more than interiors, which is weird because I think you do more work on interiors than you do on a cover. But if you are good enough and you get on certain books, your covers do tend to sell books too, and so the rate does increase for that. And so covers do pay more than interiors. Obviously, you make more off interiors because you're doing 20 to 22 of those versus the one.
Right. And then lastly, a royalty question. You talked about there was a time where you weren't getting paid royalties. I guess it was like in the beginning, the early days of DC. But as far as the practice now with the major publishers, is that a part of the normal practice now? Are colorists getting royalties now?
Yes, and so my royalty battle lasted years, and it wasn't until Jim and Dan DiDio took over as co-publishers of DC, that was fixed. So the previous publisher was the one who basically said no royalties for colorists, even though after almost 15 years worth of digital color, didn't realize that we were bringing as much to the table as the rest of the team. And so as far as I know, the major publishers do offer royalties. I do get royalties from both DC and Marvel at the time. I'm still starting to do work with the smaller publishers. I haven't done anything that's interior work yet with anyone. I'm about to do that Devour book for Ghost Machine, so I don't know if they have a royalty plan attached to their projects or not. And so, like I said, and it comes with it comes. I said yes to the project because I get to work with all these guys that I've worked with over the years that have created this really cool, new label, and the editor that I'm working with used to work with DC, and I did so much stuff with him, and so much stuff that I'm so proud of, and so it's cool. It's kind of like the old gangs getting back together in someone else's yard.
Yes, that's all I look at it too. Well, that kind of answers one of my last questions, because I wanted to know is there anything that we haven't covered that you wanted your fans to know about? You mentioned Devour, so you're going to be working with Maytal, and who's the penciler for Devour that you're going to be collaborating with?
Her name is Lil, and I'm gonna forget her last name. But the artwork is gorgeous. I think I said yes to the project largely based on her artwork. Beautiful work. It's a really cool concept as well. As far as the story goes, I don't think I can talk about it.
No, you can't. I'm probably not.
But it's really cool. I think it's a spin-off of the Hyde Street book that Ivan Rice is drawing, and so it's part of that universe. And so if you start reading it, it'll be kind of that same vibe from that series. I mean, it's cool to say yes to hey, do you want to do a Transformers cover? I was like, you bet I do.
That's awesome. Alex, man, it's always a pleasure to have you here. You're definitely coming back. So I always say you always have a home here because this is your home away from home here on the Sig Slayers Station. But thank you so much once again. Well, that's all for our show. If you like what you see, please subscribe and hit the like button. This is Sig Slayers. I'm Mike, speaking for Mark and Alex Sinclair. We are out. Peace.
Sig Slayers.